live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined by you guys on this fine Wednesday night, my time, Wednesday evening. For those of you still back home, the Lakers are still just kind of waiting. We are all waiting on what the Lakers are getting ready to do. I have been making calls and sending texts and sending emails and answering emails all day. And I think Blake sums it up pretty well here. A lot of snoring. There just isn't much noise to continue to update you with. I will do whatever I can and offer up whatever information that I can. There have been some new reports out there. Adrian Wojnarowski said that the Lakers have really been blown away by D'Angelo Russell over the last few weeks or so, and they have become increasingly or decreasingly inclined to trade D'Lo. Sure. So we'll discuss that situation. We will jump into what a quiet deadline could potentially mean. And I know that you guys hate when I do this. I know that you hated when I did it back in the summer when I did, but I do think it's worth revisiting what some of the decisions that the Lakers have made that put them in the spot here where they just don't have very many options. So, a ton of stuff to get to. We'll start though with whatever new information that we have, and basically the new information here is that there is no new information. The Lakers are going to check back in with teams tomorrow morning, as they would then be hours from the deadline. As it stands right now, those talks with Atlanta still at a standstill. As it stands right now, talks with Brooklyn also at a bit of a standstill. Teams just aren't interested in Gabe Vincent's contract moving forward. That is something that developed over the course of this deadline. So, it's just it's not a great market here for the Lakers. It hasn't been a great deadline here for the Lakers, and frankly, an offseason that a lot of people liked, and I liked parts of it. Has had its pitfalls to go with the aspects of it that we liked. Jason Kelly writes, if LeBron leaves for nothing, does Jeannie bring consequences, or is Jeannie just a bit of racism away from being James Dolan or Robert Sarver? Well, I mean, I don't think that's the only thing that splits her from those two people, but I would hope that if the decisions that Rob Pelinka has made lead in any way whatsoever to LeBron James's departure, let alone early departure, the Lakers have been planning on LeBron James retiring as a Laker. Like, that has been kind of the unstated goal from both of these sides. But if LeBron looks around and again sees an organization incapable of surrounding him with the talent to put him in position to vie for championships, then I wouldn't hold it against him for leaving. And if he does leave, that I do think that there should be people facing some consequences. But I've been told, that so long as Jeannie is there, she's going to be very, very, very patient with Rob Pelinka. Excuse me, just like he is going to be very, very, very patient with Darvin Ham, as they have been this season. And the dumb will lead the blind. But I think at the end of the day, or I think the blind will lead the dumb is the better, because like the blind wouldn't know that they're actually following the dumb. Either way, that scenario doesn't really work out very well for anybody involved. I will be taking questions here. So, Daniel Rodriguez is asking, Anthony, is there value in the buyout market for the Lakers? We will talk about that a little bit later, but I do want to spend as much time as I can here discussing the state of the deadline here for the Lakers and some of the things that they took for granted that has not worked out in their favor. So, first and foremost, the Lakers negotiated their contract with D'Angelo Russell. And when they negotiated it back this summer, essentially they gave Russell and his camp, I believe it was like brother is now his agent. They gave them two options. It's like, all right, option A, here is a 1-year, $25 million contract. Option B, here is a 2-year, $36 million contract with a player option on the second year. And D'Angelo Russell and his camp went with door number two, and they kept that player option. Now, as part of those negotiations, the Lakers told them, "All right, this is still a little higher than market value. As part of you guys signing this contract, will you waive your no trade clause?" And D'Angelo Russell did in unprecedented fashion. And so, you go from that. And I think the Lakers thought, well, it's still technically an expiring contract, because if D'Angelo Russell plays well at all, he'll probably opt out of that contract. And it's still technically a little below market value, especially if they do go door number B or door number two, and they go with that player option, and he plays for an $18 million season. And they figured at the time that, all right, that'll be a contract that they will probably be able to move, right? And they planned on being able to move. And the way that the market played out with this new CBA in place, a lot of these teams looked at that player option with D'Angelo Russell and said, yeah, nah, not really interested in that. And have passed on those trade offers. His market shrunk because of that player option. Now the Lakers are presenting it as, well, he's played so well lately. They will never, ever, ever, they can't move him based on the way that he's playing right now. And that's some spin. I'm just going to call it the way I see it. Those options kind of dwindled. And based on what I've heard, the Lakers are kind of scrambling to make themselves look a little better here, and also get a little bit of goodwill with D'Angelo Russell again, because if they don't rebuild that goodwill with him and he decides to leave this upcoming summer, then you lose that trade chip for nothing, basically, and you aren't able to turn it into anything. And the Lakers won't have cap space to make up for that loss of talent. And, a lot of people are saying, well, why are we worried about D'Angelo Russell leaving? What team is going to come way over the top and all these things? And I would point to the Lakers' history with D'Angelo Russell. They traded him once before. They shat on him on his way out of the building, right? Magic Johnson spent a full week basically criticizing D'Angelo Russell, not saying that he wasn't a leader, and essentially holding him accountable for the fact that Byron Scott was an absolute and unmitigated disaster as a head coach. Magic Johnson held that specifically against D'Angelo Russell. And so they traded him. They salary dumped him. Then he spends whatever time in the league that he does, and he comes back to LA in a trade that, like, the Lakers could have traded for Mike Conley, decided to trade for D'Angelo Russell. Russell costs a little bit less on that trade market. And they bring him back here, and that relationship has been, I would say, like, politely productive is how I would kind of frame that relationship between the two sides, where neither side dislikes each other. I think there are some annoyances and some grievances on both sides, where I think the Lakers at various points have been a little frustrated with D'Angelo Russell's availability, specifically last year when the Lakers were vying for the playoffs. There's obviously the playoff failures that we watched there in the Western Conference Finals. So you have the Lakers feeling a certain way about D'Angelo Russell, but you also have D'Angelo Russell feeling a certain way about the Lakers, where, okay, cool. So you brought me back and you signed me to this contract, and you essentially did so to trade me. And now that, it looks like it's going to cost more to trade me, now all of a sudden you're all super happy to have me around and stuff. Doesn't necessarily work like that. So as much as it is like I'm concerned that some team would come in and make some godfather offer to D'Angelo Russell and that he would get paid like crazy somewhere else, he's unrestricted. He can leave for whatever reason. We see guys take less all the time. And we have seen the Lakers lose talent to free agency all the time. And if you don't trade him here and he doesn't turn and he turns around and he leaves in this upcoming offseason, that's a big loss that the Lakers have, both in terms of talent, because I do think at his best he is a talented player, but also because this is a missed opportunity to turn him into, Brooklyn, for example, I am told, would like to have D'Angelo Russell back. They need kind of a table setter. They would like the idea of him, creating alongside Mikal Bridges, at least for a season or two, while they figure out how they are going to build around Bridges, or until they decide that they are going to build around Bridges, or eventually trade him. I do think eventually Bridges probably gets traded this year, but like a trade where D'Angelo Russell goes to Brooklyn, the Laker, and alongside, I would probably say like a heavily protected first round pick, and the Lakers would get back Dorian Finney-Smith and probably Lonnie Walker. If a trade like that were to come to be, I do think that would be enough for the two sides to come to an agreement. And yet the Lakers, I'm told, want to hold on to that 29 pick for the idea that they can combine it with a couple picks in this upcoming summer. More on that approach here in a second. And if you pass on the opportunity to turn D'Angelo Russell potentially into a starting caliber wing, and then he walks at the end of the season, that compounds the mistakes that you made getting you to that point, right? And speaking of those mistakes, I know that you guys hated it when I mentioned it, but the Lakers decided in this last off season that, all right, they are going to sign Gabe Vincent to the contract that they gave him. And then on top of that, they are going to sign Taurean Prince to his contract. And it was Prince's contract, it essentially was both of them, because technically you could have used the the taxpayer mid-level exception that they used on Gabe. They could have essentially just used that on Prince had they not signed Gabe. So because they signed both of them, that essentially hard capped them. But in hard capping themselves, they made it basically impossible to keep Malik Beasley, and made it basically impossible to keep Mo Bamba. Both of those guys would have had expiring contracts this year. And you ask yourself, and now like hindsight helps my case here, because Gabe Vincent hasn't done anything really for the Lakers. I believe he's played 5 games for the Lakers. And you say, like, were those signings worth the potential additions to your roster that you could have made with 2 big expiring contracts in Mo Bamba and in Malik Beasley? And I know I got a lot of pushback on that concept today. People saying, well, why would any team want to employ those guys? Well, they would want to employ those guys because the guys that they would be sending out would be making the same amount of money, but further into the future, whereas those guys would be coming off of their books after this season. And that was a path that the Lakers took essentially. And I said at the time, I was like, all right, fine. This does further optimize the roster heading into the season, but it does leave you a lot less margin for error. And wouldn't you know it, the Lakers kind of missed that margin for error. They don't have expiring deals that they can use to build on with this roster. They don't have those trade chips at this deadline where teams don't want the years that are additionally attached to Gabe Vincent. They don't want D'Angelo Russell's player option. And the Lakers don't have many contracts that are expiring that aren't minimums, and that really limits what you're able to do there. So, yeah, I think those things and the idea and the trend of letting players and trade chips just expire. We saw it with Alex Caruso. We saw it here with the two guys that I just mentioned in Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba. And that trend, yeah, it lowers your bill and it gets you under the luxury tax potentially, but it also severely limits what you're able to do and puts you at an inherent disadvantage against teams that have higher salaries on their books, right? The Clippers are going to be players in this deadline, and they're going to be able to add to a roster that's already worked really well so far this season. And it's because they have a whole bunch of extra salary on their books that is not, you know, devoted to current players. And yeah, it's just it's a tough spot that the Lakers find themselves in. I'm having some difficulties here, so I'm going to end this, and I'll be right back in a second.